Hi, this is Miss Goodale, and today I'm going to be talking about mean absolute deviation. Now, I have provided you with a notes sheet that goes into detail with some examples on it. Today I'm going to just do this shorter form written out to explain. First, I want to explain what the mean absolute deviation is. So what it is the mean or the average distance that all the values that you're given are away from the average or the mean of the whole set. Okay, so what this does is it helps you tell how spread out the numbers are. If the mean absolute deviation is bigger, that means the numbers are all farther away from the average or the mean. Okay, they're farther away from that measure of center. And if it's smaller, that means the numbers are closer together. So the bigger this value is, the more spread out the numbers are. The smaller it is, the less spread out they are. So the steps to finding them is to find the mean or the average of the whole set. And then you find the distance each of those values is away from the mean that you got in that first answer, which means you subtract. And then after you do that, you find the average of the values that you got in number 2. Okay, so you find the average of those values that you got when you subtract it. So let me give you an example to show you kind of what that would look like. So the first thing you have to do is find the mean or the average of the whole set. So I would add all of these numbers together. Oops. And so then if I add them together, I get 72. And then I figure out how many numbers there are. And there are 8 numbers. So I divide 72 by 8. And that should get me my average. So my average is 9. Now I find the distance away from the average. So that would mean I would subtract. Let's do 9 minus 3, 9 minus 6, 9 minus 6 again, 9 minus 7, 9 minus 8, 11 minus 9, and 16 minus 9. Notice whenever I did those, I kind of reversed the numbers. What you could also do is you could subtract the same direction and then find the absolute value of the answers. And I'll show you that at the end too. Okay, so I found the average, or found the distance, and then I add those distances all up together because I'm going to find the average of those distances. So I got 30, and then I can do 30 divided by 8. This I could come up with as a decimal or a fraction. For this example, I'm just going to write the answer. Let me write it as a fraction this time. So it's 3 6/8, which is equal to 3 3/4. And I know that as a decimal, 3 3/4 is 3.75. So my mean absolute deviation is equal to 3 3/4 or 3.75. So basically you're finding the average, you're subtracting, and you're finding the average again. Okay, so let me do one more paper pencil example, and might try another example after that if I have time. Okay, so let's use this set 3, 1, 5, 4, 8, 6. This is a smaller set. I find the average. Remember, I add them all up, divide by how many there are. 3, 1, 5, 4, 8, 6, That is 27. I know 6 doesn't go into 27 evenly, so I'm going to get a fraction or a decimal. So since I'm going to have to do some subtraction, I think it's easier to subtract decimals, so I'm going to change this to a decimal when I figure out my answers. So I'll subtract, put a 0. So this is my average, is 4.5. And then I find the distances all those numbers are from my average. So, let's see, 1.5, 3.5, 0.5, 0.5, 3.5, and 1.5. Add those up, and I get 11.0, and then I find the average of that. So 11 divided by 6, and this time I'm going to write this as a fraction just because it'll be easier to show. If I did not do this as a fraction, the decimal would be a repeating decimal. So writing it as a fraction would work better for this example. All right, so my mean absolute deviation is 1 5/6. If I did divide that, it would be 1 and then 8.83 with a line over the 3. It would have a repeating 3. Okay. Now I have a worksheet here that kind of organizes this information in a different way. So I want to kind of show you this one just for another example. So the first thing I want to do is write my values in here. 23, 15, and 15 and 7. If I add them up and divide by 4, so I would get 60 divided by 4 is 15. So my mean or my average is 15. And the difference, so if I subtract 23 minus 15, I get 8. 15 minus 15 is 0. And if I did 7 minus 15, I would get negative 8. The absolute value of negative 8 is 8. That's why I said you can also subtract them just straight across and then find the absolute value. So if I add these up, 8 plus 8 is 16. And then you have 4 numbers, so 16 divided by 4 is 4. Okay, so that is another way to do this, to organize your information and do the same thing. I hope that video helped. Let me know if you have any questions. I know it can kind of be confusing, especially a new topic. Stay tuned for more videos, and thank you for listening.